Hi everybody, this is Anne. I hear from a lot of you who watch our videos that you like to see new hand building projects, so I'm always playing with different techniques in order to come up with unique forms. Sometimes that means concentrating on the body, sometimes it can be elaborating on the foot or handle of a vessel, but you can also get creative with the rim of the pot. In this video, I've designed 3 unique hand-built pottery designs where I altered the rims. I'll demonstrate how to make them, giving you my best tips and providing the templates for free in a link in the description section below. Let's start with a fanciful coil rim. I rolled out a slab a 1/4 inch in depth and ribbed it smooth. I'll be using this oval wooden form. I raised it off the table by balancing it on this wide can. I laid the slab over the form and ribbed the clay over the curves of the oval. I used my needle tool to cut off the excess clay from under the form. I first used my sponge and then my red rib to smooth the clay tight to the form. I used my fingers to round the edge where I cut. I set that aside to dry a bit and firm up. For the rim, I rolled several coils about a 1/2 inch wide and several inches long. They don't need to be exact, in fact, I like the inconsistencies. I rolled both ends of the coils so they tapered down. To add texture to the coils, I took a bamboo stick and rolled it over the coil back and forth, up and down the coil. I filleted the coil right down the center and opened it up. My platter is a soft leather hard now, so I laid it on the table and removed the form. I scored, then slipped the top edge of the platter all the way around. For the adjoining coil, I overlapped the tapered edges and worked them together as I fit the new coil down over the rim. Now here's one that I made earlier where I coiled the entire rim with the coils. I even added several small balls of clay over the thinnest section as ornamentation. The elegant edge gives the piece an almost twisted basket look. I bisque fired it to cone 04. I glazed it with Amico Celadon to accentuate the crevices in the textured rim. Now let's alter the rim of a round bowl. I started again with a flat slab and 3 template pieces. I cut 1 of the long templates, 2 of the triangular shaped templates, and 1 of the big oval piece. For the best seam fitting, I'll make cuts along my template edges using my bevel cutter. I cut both of the long sides of the bow tie shaped template. On the triangular pieces, I cut only the rounded off sides of both. I then scored all my bevels. I'm using a styrofoam half sphere 8 inches in diameter for the mold. This one has an indentation in the bottom that I smoothed over with clay. I placed a sheet of plastic wrap over the opening. I placed the long bow tie slab in the center of the mold. If you need to steady the mold, place some clay lugs against the base. I slipped the beveled edge of one of my bow tie sides. I turned over one of the side panels bevel side down and curled the bevel back a little, then placed it on top of the first side. I worked that into place and then I repeated this along the other side. I used my finger to make sure the seams were nice and tight until they actually disappeared. I used my red rib to smooth the interior of the entire bowl. I ran my needle tool around the rim to even up the top edge with the mold. I smoothed the clay along the rim, then beveled it downward with my thumb. I placed a separate half sphere upside down on the table and covered it with a sheet of plastic wrap. I placed the squared off template piece over the mold and worked the sides down so it was rounded. I used a damp sponge and worked the edges over the mold and rounded them. Back to the bowl, I used my needle tool to score that beveled edge. I slipped it really well. I turned the squared off slab over and centered it over the bowl's edge. I placed the back side of the mold over the top and pressed the two together. I turned everything over and removed the top styrofoam sphere and plastic to reveal the underside of the bowl. I used my red rib to work the seams together. I used my finger to work the seam together between the bowl and the rim, also making sure that the rim was still conforming to the rounded mold. I replaced the plastic and the top mold. I turned over the whole thing and took away the top styrofoam mold. I used my needle tool to begin removing the excess clay from over top of the bowl. I cut a small circle out from the center, then began cutting more clay so I could get my fingers under the lip. Now I could feel where to make my cuts. I used my red rib to work the clay down from the sides into the interior of the bowl. I replaced the mold over top of the bowl just to make sure I still had a nice rounded rim. I let the bowl stiffen up a bit, then removed it to flatten the very bottom for a place to sit. Then I put it back in the mold to let it dry the rest of the way. Now here's one I made earlier. The squared off edge adds a nice contrast for interest to the very round bowl. I added some simple pointed leaves with underglaze along the outside of the bowl to match the rim and point to it as well. I glazed the rim with Amico Sky Celadon glaze and the interior with my white liner glaze. These would look great as a set. Let's make an oval container with a special rim design. I placed plastic wrap on my work surface and rolled out a long slab for this project. I cut out the long rectangular template and the oval. I set the rest of the slab aside. I beveled both short ends of the long rectangle and scored it. I scored one of the long edges. I placed the oval piece on a bat so I can move it around easier. I scored the edge of the oval and slipped it. I set the long template piece over the oval, attached the edges, and worked the seams together along the outside. I rolled a coil and worked it into the inner seam with my finger. I prepared the slab to make the rim by stamping it. I hand-carved this stamp roller. If you want to see how I made it, check out the link to the video above. Using the clay I already rolled out, I returned it to my workspace over a piece of plastic wrap. I placed the roller over the clay and worked it firmly over the slab. This time, I'm using the long tapered template. I placed it over the stamped slab and cut it out. I removed the excess clay and the template. I scored the flat, long side of the template. I beveled the small edges just like the first slab, then I peeled away the plastic wrap. The plastic keeps the slab from stretching so that it fits correctly. I placed the stamped slab over the oval so that the seam is offset from the center of the oval piece. I worked the seams together and ribbed them tight. I thought I'd roll a coil to fit over the top as a nice design element. I worked the coil to the top and sealed the seam with my finger. Now here's one I made earlier. The coil on top was a little thinner, and then I added one more element, a strip of clay over the seam topped with a little button. I ended up carving a few vertical lines along the body. I glazed the body and interior with a white glaze. I glazed the stamped section with Amico Suaro Celadon glaze. That'll look so nice to show off apples or even a baked vegetable dish. So you can see that such a little thing as altering the rim of a piece can make such a big difference to the look of your pottery. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to buy me a coffee. It also really helps us out if you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time in the studio.